Hello, everybody. When I think of the various topics that I want to talk about, I reflect on what clients are asking me. I reflect on conversations with clients, prospective clients, people in my circle that I talk to. I think back to all of my experience and various case studies that I've dealt with and client experiences. And this topic this month is one where I go, why are we talking about this? Who wants to hear about processes and building systems? But then I think about all the clients that I'm talking with, prospective clients, people on the street that are challenged with this. They think that their CPA, their tax advisor, is going to help them with this, and they're just not. If they're just their tax advisor, they're just not going to help with these things. So let me just ask you, if you're a closely held business owner, a small business owner, you are wanting to grow, but you look at your business and you say, we're doing everything. I'm doing everything. I'm doing all the sales. I'm doing all the hiring. I'm doing all the marketing. I can barely spell IT, but I'm doing all the IT stuff. I'm doing website stuff. I'm doing the client billing. I'm paying all the bills. I'm making sure all the bills get paid. I had one client just recently say they spend 3 or 4 hours per day making sure cash is in the right place and that they're paying bills. 3 to 4 hours per day as the business owner. So as I reflect on all that, I know that these are challenging issues and people are trying to figure out how to grow their business, but they just don't know how to get started. Sometimes that could just mean they need some additional help, whether it's surrounding themselves with advisors like us. But as long as they have the mental state, the awareness that things need to change, this webinar is for you because we're going to talk about how to get out of that and to start building processes within your system, within your business in order to start to leverage your time. It's all about a business owner leveraging your time, building systems, and functioning in a different way. There's a cliche that says a business owner needs to work on the business, not in the business. And certainly there's a time where a business owner is working in the business for sure. But there's a time when in a certain phase of a business's life cycle, there's a time when it makes sense to start to rise above that, put systems in place, and conduct commerce with your constituency, your customer or client base in a different way. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And as you listen to this, just think about this as you're applying it to your own system and understand this is your future. If you're wanting to scale, if you're wanting to grow your business, this is going to be an inherent part of your system, a necessary part of your life in terms of building these systems. So, sounds like a boring subject, systems, processes, but necessary. Not even going to call it a necessary evil. It's just necessary. It's a good thing. Hang on and let's start to work through these issues. I got so excited about talking about this that I forgot to even share my PowerPoint screen. So here we go. Uh, who am I? My name's Carl Baker. I own Baker CFO Advisory. We are an accounting firm that we do provide accounting tax services, but we do all that happily, and happy to do those things. Our ideal client is a client that is growing and is asking us about these very things, as well as the things that we take for granted, making sure the accounting is done right, taxes are done right, other things around the finance function. So that's what we are. That's who we are. That's what we do. I've been doing this for a long time, 30 plus years, and would love to help you. My contact information is here. It's cut off on my screen. By the way, I think we're going to be heading to a new platform, so our webinars will look different. soon. We're testing those new software studios as we speak. So hopefully this our webinar will look different soon. And That's it. So let's get started. Thanks for being here. Thanks to Pearl and the team that have helped me build this and to help me prepare for this. And let's go ahead and get started. All right. So as we introduce the subject of systems, what is my opening statement? You don't necessarily need more time. You need to spend your time differently. You need to have systems in place. Systems are built as you grow. What your systems will look like today aren't necessarily what the systems will look like in the future. But I do think it's important to start to build systems as early as possible in the conduct of your business, because the further you go down your life cycle, your business cycle, you're going to get into more chaos, higher volume, and it's just harder to pull away from that. So the more you start to think about and insert the discipline of system building into your organization, the better. The earlier, the better. So that's just something that I want to emphasize, and I'm fairly adamant and feel pretty strongly about that. All right. Why do business owners feel stuck? And I talked about this in the early opening comments. I hear people say, "I'm too busy to build system. Everything breaks when I step away. How do I get away from this? This business is really just a job to me because everything it relies on me. There's chaos, and I'm telling you, a component of that is building systems, leveraging your time. Uh, Another key insight: having an understanding of what a system is will help to enlighten you and think about your business from a different standpoint. So let's reframe what a system is. A system is something that provides some clarity. It helps with anything that is happening on a repetitive basis, your procedures, the way you do things. It also will give you the opportunity to give ownership to various people. And some of it will be you still as an owner, but it will help with assigning ownership to the way we do things. On an overall basis, I would call this the way. There needs to be a way you conduct business each and every time on a repetitive way so that your staff understand how to do things, so that your clientele, your constituency, your customer base understands how you conduct business. And the only way to do that is to standardize and put systems into place. There is I was going to say there's a misnomer. So we'll just say there are things that a system are, and contrasting with what a system is not. So a system is a way to provide clear outcomes. We talked about some of this: clear outcomes, a repeatable process. I call it the way, and a defined owner who owns each step along the way as you're conducting business. What a system is not: a system doesn't mean that you're going to have to spend a lot of money, that you're going to have a full set of standard operating procedure binders that sit on a desk, figuratively or literally. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have perfect documentation. It doesn't have to be perfect, and especially at the beginning. And certainly, you're never done with setting up your system, documenting your system. So the one and done work is a misnomer. It's an evolution and a process. A system, another way to say it, a system is how work gets done without you thinking about it. I think that's important and a simple way to say it. I've alluded to this already. A system will change by stage. There are procedures and documented procedures that are the way you'll do things early in a life cycle, as opposed to a more mature company, a larger company, a more complex company. So systems will mature as revenues grow, as complexity grows, as service lines grow, as the organization becomes more 3D, multidimensional, all those things, your systems will evolve around that. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the three or four stages in general, just in theoretical and sort of an academic fashion. Think about these things as you think about your own business, but we're going to talk about what the stages of system building is for a typical business. Then we're going to take those stages and we're going to apply them in some depth to what a finance function will look like. Then we're going to do the same thing at a much quicker, higher level, less deep way for the other things. I think of the entrepreneurial operating system and the organization chart. You have a visionary, an operator, and then below that, you have a customer service team, a sales team, marketing team, HR team, and a finance team. So we're going to touch on those. At the early stage, you might be wearing all those hats. And as you grow, then those hats get leveraged to other people. And the only way you can really effectively do that is through systems. So, academic exercise, drill deep into the finance, illustrate what they'll look like, what these stages will look like with the other functions. Then we'll start to wrap it up with how do we start to think about these things and how do we start to implement. Stage one, an owner-driven, scrappy stage. Does this sound familiar? You do almost everything. We talked about that. You do almost everything. Systems live in your head. I hear of people all the time talking about things that they need to do and they forget, and things slip through the cracks. There's a concept of speed and getting everything done in your own pace and moving at your own pace. So the concept in this stage is start to think about what it is you do, and you don't necessarily have to redesign, but what is it that you do? How do you do things? Start to formulate a plan around those things. Stage two starts to get a little more complex. You have a support driven delegation stage in your business. You start to have your first hires. Maybe those hires are in your customer service. Maybe they are in your sales. Maybe they're in your finance or HR functioning. You're outsourcing some of those. You're outsourcing your bookkeeping. You're outsourcing, maybe you get an assistant, a virtual assistant, an in-person assistant. You start to get marketing support, all very common things. And many of our clients are in this stage. But and that works for a great long while. And it might work for the rest of your business life if you're not wanting to grow anymore beyond that. But if you are wanting to grow and take on a bigger share of your market, then for sure things will start to happen. Things will start to slip. Your documentation probably isn't perfect. And so you will start to recognize that this system that you have is not working great. It used to work great, and things are starting to slip. In this way, hopefully you are rising above and you're thinking about your business from a little higher level, from that visionary perspective, or you have some help with operations. And one of the things you'll do is you'll clarify your roles. You'll add tools eventually, but you start to really focus on the handoffs. You'll focus on the leverage and evaluate whether it's time to start thinking about things differently. The things that you outsource, you might need to bring in-house. Things that you have hired, you might need to make that team more robust. There might be departments and functions within your business where you haven't really addressed. You've not hired sufficiently. You've not built systems in place. You might need to start thinking about technology, people, documentation, those sort of things. But you'll start to see that the way you used to do things, even in this stage, that way that you used to do things where it works efficiently, things are starting to break down and you realize that something needs to happen. So you move into a process driven stage. What does that mean? Multiple people are in one workflow. You talk in terms of workflow. You talk in terms of the way you serve your clients, the way you hire, the way you set up your sales pipeline, the way you do your marketing. It's not winging it. There is planning, there is intentionality, and you will start to think about these things from an overt systemic way. Just I can't emphasize that enough. The larger businesses have brought a lot of these functions in house. It's a truth that there are subcomponents that will always make sense to evaluate whether you do things on an outsourced basis or an internal basis. But one of the key notes of moving into a more complex stage is the things that you used to do everything either on your own as a business owner or through some sort of an outsourcing function because you can't afford full-time hires. You bring in the outsourcing, and at some point the outsourcing doesn't even make sense, and you start bringing in more people, and then you're really starting to ramp up some complexity in the system, and you are really functioning at a different level. At some point, even this starts to break down, especially if you don't have good systems. But some of the things that I have here in my notes focusing on standardization, we do the same thing the same way in all of our departments. We do the same thing in our finance department. We pay bills on Wednesday. We don't pay bills throughout the week. We pay bills on Wednesday. We do payroll. Most people get payroll on a fairly standardized schedule, but we do everything else on a standardized way. We bill at the exact same time. We do billing, or we do pay. We do the bill pay at the same time. We have a system for marketing. We're not just winging that. We have a system. We have a sales pipeline that we're following. So that standardization and automation and use of technology and people just thinking about systems and ways to do things, evaluating costs. We do things out on an outsource basis. Maybe we should hire, or the other way around. We've hired all of these people. Does it make sense? Let's maybe think about outsourcing. So all those things are happening on a systemic basis. All right, so let's take that theoretical exercise and let's walk through the four. I just described three stages, but we're going to talk about a fourth stage in the finance system, and let's just go through this. So, stage one, you are the finance team. By the way, in this stage, you're probably also the sales team, the marketing team, the HR team, the visionary. You're doing everything. You're serving customers. But in terms of finance system, you are the finance team. All invoices come to you. Guess what? I bet a lot of those get buried in your email. You're basically managing the business through managing your bank balance. You're paying attention to the bank balance, and that's what you're paying attention to. There's owner reaction instead of planning. We've talked about planning and the importance of that. That's one of the maturation stages as the business gets more complex. So a system focus in this case is you have one source of truth. That's usually the bank account. Perhaps you start to mature and you start to think about things a little differently and migrate to a second phase, the second stage, and you might phase into it. You start to think of a 15-minute money check. You start to ask, not on a daily basis, but maybe on a weekly basis, what have been my sales? What have been my deposits? Maybe you set a stack of bills aside and you pay them once a week instead of just on an ad hoc, continuous basis. Stage two, you start to hire a bookkeeper, whether that is on a internal or outsourced basis. Oftentimes people will hire an internal bookkeeper, and because that's what they can afford. They don't know about the opportunity to use an outsourcing function. All they know is hiring somebody, so they hire somebody based on what they can afford, not based on what the needed skill set is, and that's where businesses get in trouble. I've been an auditor for 25 years, and I've seen that with clients. I've seen that in my CFO advisory work. I've seen that in in other capacities. And just know there's a right way to spend your money when it comes to accounting. So, but in this stage, what's happening, the bookkeeper, let's just assume that you've hired a quality bookkeeper, whether it's part-time in-house, part-time outsource basis, full-time, it doesn't matter. But your transactions start to get cleaned up. You start to get reports. Maybe you're not an accountant, you haven't been trained on what the balance sheet means, what a income statement or a P&L looks like, but you're getting these reports. I hear all the time, I get them from my bookkeeper. I don't know what they mean, but I get them, and we have a good set of books. So my hope is that you can also eventually understand your reporting, but you at least have them. As this stage matures, you start to think about having a monthly close process where you focus on a way you compile your reports and give results to get results from your bookkeeping department for your understanding of how the business goes. So there's a way we conduct a process in order to give you a set of reports so that you understand what you own, what you owe, how much your revenues were, how much your expenses were, and just really having a system around that close process. Having deadlines, setting expectations as to when are we going to do this on the second day of the month after month end. Are we going to, do we have complexities where we need to wait 15 days? I've seen both, and it really just depends on the business. But having a set of clear deadlines, a clear process, having good timing and decision support is one of the values of this stage in getting your organization cleaned up in terms of financial reporting. A common mistake, though, is that the bookkeeper or the owner will continue to manage off of a bank statement. So, and eventually, a simple bookkeeper will just not suffice, and we start to think about bigger picture issues. As we segue into that, having a controller that's thinking about not just bookkeeping but accounting, and there is a difference. So understanding the actual full-fledged financial reporting, having somebody that's paying attention to not only the transactions but a little bit of a bigger picture. Also having a CFO, a chief financial officer that thinks not just about the historical reporting but the future. Again, we're evolving, we're segueing to a planning approach, an intentional approach, an overt approach, not just winging it. So we want to think ahead. We want to have forecasting instead of having guesswork. We want to have proactive decision making. We want to have budgets so that we can compare our results with what we expected the results to be and draw some conclusions from that. We want to have a system focus on a forecast. We talk about the budget. Well, I talked about those three steps in the system focus, cash planning tied to growth. The whole point of that is we're setting in advance some expectations about what is going to happen with the business. And then as time transpires and things happen, we can start to compare reality to those expectations, draw conclusions from that, and then pivot as necessary. Because that's the whole point, is to set those expectations. If things are going south, so to speak, then what's causing that and what do we need to do to evaluate that? All right. So I say in this is a fully functioning finance department where you have, at this point, this is really maybe stage 4, maybe it's stage 3B. But at a certain point, and if you've not experienced this, then this might be hard to imagine. But at a certain point in your business life cycle, you as the business owner things will be handed to you. You're not deciding necessarily when to pay bills. You're not necessarily deciding, you're not checking the bank account to make sure we have cash. You have people that are qualified, you have systems in place, you have controls in place to mitigate the risk of fraud and theft, but you have a whole system. You might have a team of 10, 20, 30 people that are helping you in the finance department. You're paying bills, 100, 200 bills per week. And there's a whole system around that. And you, as the business owner, may or may not have anything to do with that. You just know that bills are getting paid, and your life in terms of the finance function has materially changed. But this department is paying bills, taking care of payroll. We talked about the controls. There's a technology stack. We talked about all these things. You have systems, workflow, and you are no longer micromanaging this system, but there are people in place that are helping mitigating the risk and making sure everything gets done properly. And I've seen this many times, lived in this world, overseen these departments. I've audited these departments. It's a thing, and it is your future as you navigate through a growing business. This is the reality in terms of a fully functioning business. All right, so we've talked about the finance department. Now let's go through this for a few of the other phases, and then we'll start to talk about how to begin doing this. In a marketing system, 3 stages. Early in the stage, you might have one primary channel. Maybe it's referral groups. Maybe it is SEO. Maybe it is pay-per-click. But you have one thing that you're paying attention to. You might then evolve into having multiple things. You have a content calendar. You have lead tracking. You have tracking of website clicks. You start to get a little more sophisticated, and eventually you move into a stage 3 where you are setting expectations, planning, you have a budget, you're building that budget, you have expectations, and then you're comparing reality to those expectations. You have an ROI metric. So just to give you a sense for how this converts from reactionary to proactive management of just one component of your system, the marketing system. Then we'll do this for other systems. Same thing in the sales. Early in the stage, the founder is the boots on the ground, is the person contacting and talking with prospective clients, converting the prospective status to an actual customer. Deals are coming in an inbox, maybe through phone calls, maybe through email, however it is you're getting your customers, but the founder is managing this. You might then add some basic customer relationship management software. You start to think about ways to mitigate the risk of steps falling through the cracks. So you define some steps. You evolve into a stage 2. You hire a salesperson. You're starting to leverage a little bit. You add lead handoff rules. Somebody takes the initiative, they get to a certain place, and then they hand that off to somebody else. And then the follow-up cadence. There is a way you start to build these systems. Then in a stage 3, you have a team. You're setting expectations. You're adding pipeline expectations. You're defining the stages of a sales process in a more articulate way, in a more memorialized process. Then you're using that data to add some intentionality, to add some expectations. You have some forecasting, and the more you do that, the more accurate those forecasts become. And again, it goes from reactive to proactive. On a HR and people systems standpoint, the 3 stages. Stage number 1, you have informal hiring. You're winging it. You get to a certain level of chaos. You can't take it anymore. You hire somebody. You add that person early in the stage is just there to help. You start to develop some systems, some expectations, you work well together, those sort of things. You add some clarity. Maybe you ask them to help with building some documentation of processes. Then you have 30, 60, 90-day expectations. That evolves into stage two. You have a growing team. The two of you or the 10 of you can't do it anymore, so you grow a team. You start to add check-ins, feedback loops. You start to talk in those terms. You never talked like that before, but you start to talk in those terms. You start to really think about your hiring as a system. You're building expectations. You move into stage three, where you add a management layer. You're adding some leadership. Somewhere along the line, you might add some outsourced HR. Maybe you bring it in-house eventually, but certainly I meet people all the time and met some people recently that are doing the outsourced HR function, whether it's compliance, whether it's recruiting, whatever the case may be. At some point, it makes sense to make HR a thing. You know that in 3 months you need X number of people. There needs to be a plan in place to get there. And you can't do it all yourself as the business owner. So you put these plans in place. Go back to stage three. You add the leadership cadence, you add rhythms, you add systems. Can't say it any better than that. All right. So hopefully you get a sense for what I'm talking about, and you're still with me and you're listening to this and you're going, how do I do this? Yes, I'm banging my head against a wall. I want help. You probably do need to talk to somebody, but I'm going to give you some ideas. Why does it feel like you don't have time? You're repeating explanations. You're always fixing mistakes. You're always answering the same questions. Those are leading indicators. You need to, again, rise above and put some processes in place and start to think about it. So I've got a couple slides here where I'm just going to ask you some questions. How do we start without feeling overwhelmed? The first thing I think of is go back to that stage three. Think about your business not in a ramp up stage, not in maybe a stable stage. I don't know where you are, but you're growing, you're stable, you're pre-revenue, you're startup, you're ramping up, whatever it is. Think about what you will look like in the future. Think about that fourth stage that I talked about in the finance department, or the third stage in the others. In an overall capacity, instead of you doing everything, you have a team. You have a team in the HR department. You have a team in the sales department, the marketing department, the customer service department, the finance department. Just think about that. Work backwards from where you are and ask a few questions. You don't have to have it all figured out. You probably can, by asking yourself a few questions, you can figure out where your priorities are. I recognize the fact that you are a growing business. You have things to do. I'm not saying you don't do anything in the business and you're just leveraging everything. It's a process. So ask you, owner, where are you spending your time? Where are you spending your time on a repetitive manner, in a manner that it feels like you're always solving those problems? Where are those issues? And maybe that's a way to evaluate. That's a good place to start. Is it in HR? Maybe we start to focus on the HR function. Is it making sure bills get paid? Is it making sure that your financial reporting is right because your banker is asking for questions, asking for reports? Is it developing a larger following, and maybe it's in the sales function? And what does that look like, and how to work backwards from there? Where could you best serve the company? And where is the best use of your time? I say all the time that a person needs to work at their level of incompetence. What's challenging you, and let go of the rest and start to build systems around that. So that's kind of an opening comment around that. Break it down to a three system rule, and the main buckets. I've talked about the EOS format of a structure, but keep it simpler here. Help you see the financial reality by evaluating your money system. How does work get done in your delivery system? How are choices made without you? What is the decision system? What is the protocol of those procedures? Start to think about it from those perspective. Use this presentation as a work plan and evaluate ways you can phase these components into your own way of doing things. What's a simple rule? We've talked about, identifying where your problems are, but a simple rule, if a function is happening more than twice, it probably deserves some sort of a system. And again, I always talk about the way. This is how we do things. I was in a meeting today and a gentleman was talking about his business, and it's an old business, and the founder established their way of doing things in a long time ago. How do they approach a customer? How do they talk about the sales process, the proposal process? How do they perform the service? How do they make sure people understand the customer service people? How do they have the skill set? How do we conduct the follow up? So there is a way, and they've memorialized that so that each and every time their customers can have a set of expectations about what it's like to do business with that organization. I've talked about it before. Go to our website, bakercfoadvisory.com. We have a white paper on this subject, as well as many other white papers, and you might get some nuggets from it. If you want this presentation, reach out to me. I'll send you this presentation. But we have some great resources on our website, bakercfoadvisory.com. And I just encourage you to sign up for our newsletters, where we will send these documents to you. In closing, systems are not a distraction from growth. They're not a necessary evil. They will actually make your growth sustainable. So important to understand that. If you are wanting to grow your business, if you're wanting to even conduct your business effectively, there needs to be some version of a set of systems. And the more you have an appetite for growth, adding the complexity, the more it will be necessary to do this. I talk to people all the time. As recently as yesterday, an organization has been very successful, but they want to put systems in place. They don't know how to get started with that. They're talking about corporate structure, departments, financial reporting. This is out there. People are struggling with this. And I hope some of these nuggets have been helpful to you. And we thank you for that, and thank you for your time. As we move into closing, I'll just say thank you again. We are going to continue in our series in April. We're going to do a subcomponent of this series, and we're going to talk about, just to give you some ideas, we're going to talk about the first five, in our opinion, the first five standard operating procedures that will probably be important to you. How to put a little more detail around this subject. I suspect it'll be heavily finance oriented, but we'll continue with this, and we appreciate you listening today. We appreciate you following us on YouTube. Like this show, share it. That would be wonderful if you share the show with your network, and subscribe, and you'll get notices about this. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Again, my name's Carl Baker. My contact information is there. The website is built into my email address there. Call us, reach out. We're always happy to have conversations with people. We're not high pressure salespeople. We're just trying to add value in helping businesses and business owners with these needs. With that, I'll say thank you and see you next time. God bless. Bye-bye.